This is Souk Business Landscape.
It's a beautiful morning right here in the commercial city of Lagos. I am Oyinpriye Krumale. Welcome to Souk Business Landscape. This is your authoritative window into the forces shaping Nigeria's and the world's evolving economic realities. Today, we will explore the intersections of policy, enterprise, investment, and innovation, analyzing how they drive development and how they influence our markets and redefine the national competitiveness from the oil fields of the Niger Delta to the global boardrooms, from trade corridors to emerging tech hubs. We'll bring you thought-provoking analysis on the stories behind the numbers. We don't just report the news. We interpret the trends that matter for business leaders, policymakers, and the investment public. That includes you and me. I'm Oyinpriye Krumale. Welcome to the program once again. The Nigerian Senate on Wednesday received an interim report from its ad hoc committee probing crude oil theft in the Niger Delta, raising alarm over the possible loss of more than 300 billion naira in unaccounted oil proceeds due to widespread collusion, poor oversight, and sabotage. The committee, led by Senator Ned Nwoko from Delta North, was inaugurated to investigate crude oil theft, illegal bunkering, and export fraud, as well as regulatory and security failures that have consistently undermined Nigeria's oil output and OPEC quota compliance. Presenting its findings, Nwoko said the committee uncovered deep-rooted irregularities, including unreliable measurement systems, compromised enforcement, and lack of accountability across the value chain. He warned that continued sabotage would not only erode revenue, but also threaten national security and investor confidence. The Senate is expected to consider further legislative action upon receiving the committee's final report. So the committee is not done with this report yet. They are still in the middle of it. However, they made fit rather to feed the Senate on how things are panning out and how it needs to be taken care of, and some of the revelations that has been coming, and how the Senate will need to put its house together and probably maybe request the appearance of Mr. Bayo Ojulari and some of his
your cousin.
However, but one thing that should be noted is this concerning oil. When we look at that specific report, it talked about a fraudulent measuring systems that does not align. That means this is the same argument most Nigerians are pushing, and that's why they are quite suspicious that, look, how many barrels do we produce? How many do we refine? Specific data that will lead to specific numbers.
Bam.
It's not, they felt it's not being produced, it's not being released. And even if it is being released, from what we saw from Senator Moko's report, it looks as if it has been doctored. So there are other attending issues as well, the sabotage, the pipelines, and all others. So I'm going to even look at Tantita. We are going to even maybe bring Tantita into the whole process. However, how can we make this right?
You know that according to OPEC, each country, especially Nigeria, is supposed to be able to produce 1.5 million BPD. Now we are not even scratching the surface.
No,
of
we've
that.
passed OPEC's quota,
Okay.
if that's the case, because as it is currently, we are doing 1.6, 1.7 million barrels per day.
Now, the 1.6, 1.5 we are doing from OPEC. By the time you find out from this investigation, by the time, when they are saying numbers are not meeting, by the time international or handle drops the numbers they have got out, and what NNPC is saying, there's a far cry. By the time other local, refineries drop, there's a far cry from what NNPC is saying. NNPC keeps, bringing one reason why the federal government is still in debt, why they still owe some things. When all of this, if everything put together is supposed to cover, is supposed to be good. The next thing we are going to talk about is how important is this for us as a country. First, we have to look for accountability, because the Senate sitting on this would now make everybody start to put their eyes on what is really happening in the oil and gas sector, whether the local producing or the international production level. And so this is important, and this will get towards transparency, because for a long time there has been no transparency when it comes to production. Also, this is supposed to form a policy so that we can have some reforms on the already existing policy. There was a time we're talking about the importance of digitalization when it comes to our mainstream and mainstream and forgotten what they call it again. And
the midstream and downstream.
Downstream. We're talking about the importance of accountability going digital. That it's high time somebody stops saying, oh, I think it's 10 BDP that was produced. It's high time data will tell you, look, this is what's estimated, this is the precise figure, this is the precise amount. That one is very important, because from this we can now put our hands on revenue that the country is collecting. As much as the budget has been leaning towards, it's trying to lean slightly away from oil, we still need to ensure that whatever is coming from petroleum products or our petroleum products is critical, because that's still going to make the economy, and that's still going to stop us from borrowing and all that. Now, we cannot run away from the national security issues in the Niger Delta when it comes to pipeline vandalization, when it comes to illegal bomb-free, you said they were supposed to call the petroleum minister and actually sit him down, because he has been telling us that they have been able to curb. He's been giving us a very good front that most of
from a large perspective and large point of view, we've seen that oil bunkering has been brought down to the barest minimum.
But from this
because
report,
it has not been consistent, it has not been rampant the way it was.
Yes.
And we shouldn't there's something I'm looking at.
Yes.
And there are things that Nigerians most of the time will say there are some issues that we shouldn't play politics with. But
okay.
I'm sorry, there's nothing that can, completely, in governance of a country, most especially with talking about the resources that are going to be used to manage the affairs of the country. Politics cannot completely be out of it. However, politics is not where we're dwelling on. We're dwelling on what we currently have and what we should be getting. From the estimation that we are told from this finding is that what we have lost so far is almost equal, or should be around about 300 billion naira. 300, it's a huge amount, but I'm not going to stay with that figure. Tantita, on its own part, even when it was established and when it was being sustained to protect the pipelines in that part of town, we've seen it gone to work to the extent that pipeline vandalism went down. It didn't, frequent the news the way we used to say it. If there's going to be a strong will, either from the previous administration, the current administration, or subsequent administration in tackling this act of ferrying Nigerian resources away, so that we can get value for what we are producing, then it will also need to look inward and bring to book any suspicion of anyone found to be in the corridors of power who might be having their hands in this
Nobody is at everything you are saying. We are still in the same line. What I am raising is with the Tantita, with the reforms, there is still a 300 billion oil on proceeds unaccounted for. Now, this is 300 billion we can track. That means that this 300 billion was documented.
We are talking about this report that the committee that Senator Ned Nwoko, has been, commissioned to look at with regards to oil bunkering, oil and gas, and how we've been making losses that might be up to the tune of 300 billion naira. And there were lots of items that were put out, some of the activities and the menace that would have resulted to that. data is part of it, pipeline vandalism is part of it, and other menace and antisocial activities that must have resorted to us losing monies that could be up to that amount. And we are trying to interrogate the matter and the responsibility of the government, well, not leaving the governed out of it also. So please, if you can share your perspective.
Well, I've been following the argument since for a while now, but the part, like Chief said earlier on, is that the 300 billion is the one that they can track, but the money that they can track is way more than that. There was a time, I think, the beginning of Buhari's tenure towards Jonathan's tenure, when Mr. Femi Falana SAN instituted a class action against the federal government on this issue of crude oil theft and on the reportage of crude oil that were transported out of the country to the tune of $20 billion. So if you convert $20 billion at any time to naira, it is more than way more than that $3 billion. Because if we even say okay, it was during Jonathan's time when dollar was around 198 naira, when when dollar was 198 naira, you would still see that it is more than 300 billion naira. And so that case, despite all effort by Mr. Femi Falana, it has not been, nothing has been done about it by the federal government. And how did Femi Falana get his information? So I think, when crude oil tankers leave Nigeria, they will declare the amount of oil they took out of Nigeria. When they reach their port of destination, they will declare the amount of oil that they are delivering at their port of destination. So a crude oil tanker will say, I've taken 30 metric tons out from Nigeria, for example, and then we'll get to spot of delivery in the US or in Brussels or anywhere, and we'll say, I am delivering 300 metric tons. So you begin to wonder, where did they get 270 extra metric tons when the ship did not declare in its manifest that along the way, maybe after I left Nigeria, I went to take another 100 metric tons
Delivery.
from Gabon. I went to maybe Ghana or Equatorial Guinea, for example. There is nothing like that on the manifest. The manifest says I left Nigerian ports and now I'm in a port in maybe Portsmouth or Liverpool or Brussels or anywhere else. Yeah, and you are delivering 200 and 300 and 300 metric tons. So where did the 270 metric ton came from? And by the time they calculated all that money that Nigerian government has lost, it amounted at that time to well over $20 billion. And you see, so this new expose is not really new. And that is why until we sell everything uh, and privatize it in the oil and gas sector, we are only deceiving ourselves. Other nations that have been able to protect their oil and gas assets and it in the hands of government, go and check many of those nations that are not as powerful as US, where they have all the power and whatever to monitor their production and everything. You see that most of the Arabian nations where crude oil accountability is solid, like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, you will see that most of these nations are usually monolingual and sometimes, most of the time, monoreligious. So, which
Okay.
means even if they have a few ethnic group, like the have 7 different ethnic groups that make up the 7 different emirates, you know, but they are all monolingual and most of the time monoethnic. So their voice can be won when they say we want to do this thing. It is in Nigeria that now that Medinoko is out, before you know it, some people will say because it's from the Niger Delta and they are trying to remove the hands of those maybe from the northwest or northeast who are oil block owners or the major player in the oil industry that it is a tribal attack on the business of those people, or maybe a tribal attack on the business of Southwesterners whose hand might be caught in the cookie jar in the course of the investigation. Or
Okay.
even within the South themselves, they will say, oh, maybe because it's a Delta Igbo, that's why he's attacking the Joy Shekiri Urobo and all the whatnot. And all these arguments usually find a way of gaining traction and watering down the crux of the matter itself. And you see, all of our hands are not clean because the civil servant, people pay as much as 30, 40 million to get a job that pays maybe 400,000 naira a month, or even at most, maybe 800,000 naira a month in those oil industry. Why are they
Okay.
paying 30 million? They are paying 30 million specifically posted certain areas because they know that when they are posted to that certain areas on a weekend, sometimes they can go home with as much as 10,000.